for attending this press conference. Most people would recognize that we have been limiting the amount of public engagements for the past several weeks. And this is largely because of the coronavirus. And so I want to assure the supporters of the People's Progressive Party that one of the reasons why we have not been coming out more often is because we do not want to bring people together in gatherings. It is very important that we observe all the protocols and ensure that there is limited transmission of the coronavirus. This virus can have a devastating consequence for our country, and therefore we all have to be extremely careful. So today I decided to have a press engagement, and I want to make this a very short one because along with the protocol that I just outlined. And this is largely to respond to some of the issues raised by Mr. Harman today, and I think it was Raphael Trotman when they had a press conference earlier. I've taken the unusual step to host a press conference just to do that because they keep repeating a lot of the lies that we've been hearing. So without going through the long list of issues raised at their press conference today, I just want to go through a few points to show you how they're more interested in changing a narrative rather than addressing the crisis that our country faces, particularly in relation to elections. So the first tone was that they're trying to change the narrative in Washington. And I know that they have been actively working there to try to get people to move away, particularly in the US government, the Congress, and in some other countries, from the entire narrative about fraudulent elections, that the results of Region 4 are not credible, to one about this is something that has to do with the court, and secondly, it has to do with some ethnic problem we have in Guyana. So they've been busy putting people to work to try to create that narrative. Now, I need to just say to people in Guyana that they're deluding themselves, that the entire world has seen what took place, that the results for Region 4 are fraudulent, and no matter what they do, they're not going to change that within the circles in Washington or elsewhere. So they are, they are fighting a losing battle in that regard. People see this as an attempt to grab power. Just imagine, had APNU won these elections, you wouldn't have had any issue about power sharing, etc. And you saw the very partisan way in which they operated when they had such a tiny majority, less than 1 percentage point difference in the last elections. So the way they're trying to do that now is by hiring some firms in Washington. I was privy to some information where they contacted one person, and Amnali, Raphael Trotman, Vincent Alexander, and Cathy Hughes were launched into a diatribe with the person from Washington who was seeking to advise them about mercury and Russian being present in Guyana and that sort of nonsense. I saw there was a repetition of it today at the press conference that they had, where they continue with that entire narrative about Mercury. Now, Mercury, we had hired Mercury a long time back. That matter was fully explored in the public domain at several press conferences I've had. People in Mercury are not Russians, they're Americans. Many of them work in senior levels in the US government, some in Congress, some in the executive, etc. They're a lobbying firm. They're required to register any involvement with any government, which they have done. And so all the information that they're repeating, that information is coming from a public source. The next thing that we saw was that they said that they had nothing to do with the court case. Now, anybody would know that when you look at the characters who have filed a court case, APNU candidates, not just being the person who filed, they'll later more, but Roysdale Ford, another APNU candidate, is the lawyer for Oleta Moore. And this was carefully planned by APNU to sabotage the CARICOM agreement. They didn't want the CARICOM agreement because that would have exposed the corruption and the fraudulent results. So Granger made CARICOM believe that he genuinely wanted to move forward, and then got his people to go and file this case, so then he can use this as an excuse to say, oh, I wanted to find a solution forward, but it's not me, it's the courts. And so that is, again, very transparent. So their position where they're saying, oh, we have nothing to do with the court case is as hollow as everyone knows, because the whole country knows that it's very hollow. The third thing is, I saw coming out of that press conference, Trotman said that their SOPs are closely guarded. They put them in a lock and key in Congress Place, and they're guarding them. 4 guards are standing watching these SOPs. Now, all you have to do is to upload them. The best way of guarding your SOPs is to put them online, like we did. But they have to physically guard their SOPs. It's the same SOPs that GCOM has that were given to them and given to us. We've uploaded ours. We did the calculation. It showed the PPP won the elections. They are guarding theirs. They can't release them. They don't want GCOM to release their copies, and they expect this country to believe them. So that was something else. Then I saw them saying that the small parties and civil society organizations who were asking for sanctions along with the PPP, that they're anti-national. Now, first of all, Granger himself had requested sanctions in the past. A long diatribe in 2014 about the country must face sanctions from abroad if Donald Ramotar didn't end the prorogation of Parliament. So to prorogue Parliament, he called for sanctions to end the prorogation. Now he doesn't want sanctions when he is trying to steal a whole election. And that is the duplicity of Granger and the cabal. So we are not anti-national. That's the first thing. The people who are anti-national is this APNU AFC cabal that will put the country at risk and all of our people at risk from sanctions because of their lust for power. They are the ones who are anti-national. The civil society organizations, the small parties, etc., we're still trying to avoid the sanctions by asking them to do the right thing, which is to have a recount done that would allow the rightful president to be sworn in, and then we can avoid all of the sanctions, personal as well as national sanctions that would affect all of our people, and then we can move forward with the business of governing the country, dealing with the coronavirus and dealing with everything else. We are, even at this stage, we are trying to fight to avoid the sanctions, but we are also asking the international community to stay resolute and to bring the sanctions down heavily upon the heads of those who will put our entire country at risk and our democracy at risk. These are just some of the things that were mentioned at the press conference today. There, once again, APNU is saying, oh, we believe in the law, we believe in the Constitution, let the court case take its course, and whatever happens there, we will live with. Now, the court case, for example, if it doesn't allow a recount, that doesn't change the results. The results will still be fraudulent results. A president sworn in on the basis of those results will still be illegally legitimate. So, court case, if it goes that way, does not resolve the issue before us, which is the fraudulent results that were announced. And that is why, and even if the court goes that way, which I find it very difficult that it would want to go that way, to take away a remedy that can fix this situation and avoid the country getting into unknown territory and very, very dangerous grounds for our people and for those individuals and their families who are pushing us along this path. But a court, I don't think, can tell an independent commission that they have to certify fraudulent results. So the commission now knows, at least most of the commission, and I'm sure the chair, knows that these results are fraudulent ones declared by Mingo. Assuming Lowenfield takes the same fraudulent results, and they know it's fraudulent because the entire international community has said so, and they refuse to use the SOP to prove otherwise. So, assuming Lowenfield takes these fraudulent results to the chair, it means that the chair has to, on the basis of a court order, not her conscience or independence, now certified fraudulent results. So since when a court can order a judicial office, an independent body, to certify fraudulent results, I don't think that could ever happen. And so it will be up to the conscience of the chair and others whether they will be part of this act of fraud when it gets to their level. So there are lots of things that are still in the works. I want people to understand that APNU just wants to hang on to power at all costs. That's all they're trying to do, hang on to power at all costs. Somehow in their heads they think that this will go away. It will not go away. We will seek the toughest sanctions on these individuals and their families, and they will not be able to survive. They will not be able to run the country. They'll have no access to money from bilateral or multilateral sources. They're not going to get access to the oil money. They'd face individual sanctions. We'll have restrictions from our exports and a whole range of stuff that will harm Guyana, but it will also hopefully make them see the folly of their ways. I just saw a couple of statements from GCOM, but I'm not going to deal with those extensively. Just to say that party reps are not basically by law authorized to watch containers. And I just want them to know the reason we had to take the extreme measure of having to secure permission to do so is because nobody trusts the staff of GCOM, given the performance that they have pulled off, the fraudulent performance. So leaving the containers in their hands to secure the ballots is something that we can't accept. And that is why, in light of the need for transparency and to protect the ballot boxes, should we go to a recount, there is a necessity to continue watching those containers and ballot boxes. I'm not going to go into all of the other issues, a repetition of issues that we have dealt with in the public domain in the past. So I'll just end the press conference there. Just want to say once more that people should take extreme care. They should take extreme care, especially older folks, because the coronavirus has an enormous impact on older people, but for everyone. And we have internally, we have a planning team. We've been working at not just how to tackle the coronavirus and to limit the pandemic in Guyana, but also how do we recover from this? But how do people go back to work? How do businesses prosper after this is all over? Because apart from the elections, which is having a toll on our country, and the sanctions would too, the coronavirus would have its own major economic impact. And therefore, we have been looking at this internally so that once their finale is sworn in as president, that we can tackle this matter from day one. Thank you. Any questions? No?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you think that there should be a lockdown on the country considering how the impact of the coronavirus?
It depends. Most people now, I think, there are already an advisory that they stay away from work and stuff like that. I do believe that particularly among young people and in like social space, that there's still some level of I would say looseness. I don't want to, because I know people feel trapped at home and all of that, but they have to be more limited. I've heard reports of gatherings, socializing and stuff like that, even some clubs operating and stuff like that. And that's not an environment that is conducive to limiting the spread of the virus. But people should observe social distancing. They must observe social distancing. This is crucial for our country. Thank you.
Would you favor election petition?
Huh?
Would you favor election petition because the lawyers
No.
are
Yes.
hinting at that all the time?
That is precisely what they want. The elections petition is what APNU wants. So they want to create this air of normalcy, as though the rigging never took place, although it took place in front of the world, and you have international condemnation. Everybody knows the results are fraudulent. We have proven it so many times, where more votes were announced for areas than you have electors. So they would like to move it away from fraud into a normal kind of environment where, if you have a dispute over the elections, you file an election petition, like what happened in 2015. So they're remembering fondly that in 2015, we filed an election petition. And what happened? 5 years later, the elections petition was not heard. They blocked it in the court. So they can then survive out the 5 years by doing what they did between 2015 and 2020. And with this group here, they don't even respect court rulings. So you saw how they dealt with the Constitution in the no confidence motion. Plus, when the CCJ ruled, they refused to comply with the ruling of the CCJ. It was only through street protests and the international community saying that they were unconstitutional that we forced Granger basically to name March 2nd as the date. Granger doesn't respect Constitution, the rule of law, court decisions. They love to go to the court because they somehow in their heads they believe that there is sympathy there, that they can get rulings that would delay the process. So this must not be about the stealing of elections. This would be, oh, you have a little dispute over the election results. Well, that's not the case now. This is the stealing of elections. We don't want another election, because I heard some of them saying they're trying to push that narrative. Oh, why don't we get together, work together for 3 years or 4 years, and then go to an election together, a new election? Well, we don't want new elections. We want these results to be counted, the results for these elections to be counted. We don't want new elections. And that is what they're pushing for, elections petition. Let's go to elections petition. That's not going to work. And the international community knows that. I remember the State Department saying one time, court ruling or no court ruling, the results are fraudulent. Any government sworn in on the basis of these fraudulent results will be de facto regime and will be illegitimate, and they will face sanctions. Imagine these guys in the face of sanctions or the threat of sanctions from the highest levels in the US government. Imagine the National Security Council, which is the highest level of operational decision making in the US on an operational basis. They threaten sanctions, and Granger and the others just still want to hang on. There must be a lot to hide. They must have really a lot to hide, not to want to allow a democratic transition. But if they think, many of them may think that because they're not very sophisticated, particularly the James Bond and the others, and they would think they will get away with it. Somehow people will forget about it and we'll survive. We can, here in Guyana, things are just going to disappear. While they're not. They're deluding themselves, and a lot of their families too. Yeah. Thank you.